the element of Zugzwang in both pawn endings and knight endings, which are very similar. This is kind of a cute position, and this is a win for white, believe it or not, even though he has no pawns left, and black is quite advanced with this pawn, and you think that at the very least he'll be able to stalemate himself. However, he doesn't succeed in that. So if it's white, white on the move, he just wants to maneuver itself to a mating position. So he'll go like here, here, king f1 at the right time when the king is here and the pawn is here is going to be mate. However, this is black to move, and still he can't save himself. So black is going to try to play the move king h1. We will notice that if instead, oh sorry, it doesn't deal with g5, but it's the same. It's just the same idea. After g5 or king h1, it's exactly the same thing, as you will see. So we can see it. g5, knight f6, g4. He's willing to give everything away just to create a stalemate situation. However, after one pawn is taken here, king f1, here, mate. So g5 doesn't work, but also king h1 doesn't work. Again, knight f6. And now let's examine the possibilities. g5 we already saw, basically. We can see it again. After here, it's the same principle. Here, he's going to move the knight. And when the pawn comes to g4, you can imagine knight f1. The only legal move is g3. Knight takes g3 is mate. So after king h1, knight f6, he's going to try again. Let's try this, here, 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 here. Same situation. And lastly, after king here, he is forcing him to play h2. And again, the same maneuver, knight e3, g4 here, and mate. So this is the point, is that sometimes when there's issues in space and Zugzwang, there is just no hope for the side that is cramped. Okay, this is just a warm-up. Now to our topic, which is mostly incorrect liquidation into what they think is a win, and in actuality it's not a win. In this position, it's very easy to see that white is hugely better. He has a much better minor piece, a much more active rook, better pawn structure right now, because those pawns are falling. And even the king is better placed, because this king is a bit suspicious on g6 with a bishop on g7. So there was a chance to beat Smyslov, who is not easy to beat. And in this position, there really are a lot of good moves. You can definitely take the pawn. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be really prudent, you can play king e1 or king e2, just to prevent any penetrations with the rook, like rook check and rook here. Although in this specific position, it's really not very relevant. But if you really want to do it the methodical way, move the king, there's just some things are chronic. For example, the weakness of that bishop against the knight, you cannot fix. It's forever. Therefore, the element of time loses a little bit of its strength. So white plays this move. Pinning. In itself, not a necessity. But again, since time is not a big factor, it's not a huge, terrible mistake. Black breaks the pin. What else? And in this position, it was not too late to just admit that the plan was wrong. Go rook e8. And of course, I'd rather be white. I want to play rook e7, trading rooks, because again, trading the rooks is going to even further accentuate the strength of the knight over the bishop. You can imagine that my king is a direct line here. Just e2, d3, c4, and I'm going to take a lot of pawns. But white just calculated that, oh, I'm going to have a forced win, and he played rook takes g7, takes, takes, takes. Again, it looks like the king has a direct line, but you have to worry about the move f5. Because after f5, pawn takes, and then stuff like e4, king takes, king advances, king takes, that's going to give the lead to counterplay. So white was counting on the move g4, thinking that that's going to win the game for him, because, well, either he's going to freeze the king side, and then his king is going to just zoom ahead to the queen side winning, or in the case of the exchange, he's going to get himself a protected pass pawn, a huge asset in any endgame. But sometimes there are just uniquities to every position that change it. Here Smyslov jumps an opportunity and an opportunity that he never thought he'll have. So, yeah, of course. So he takes. Again, looks completely winning for white because there's an outside pass pawn that looks like it's going to keep black really busy. Also, white has the option of playing g4, locking the king side, like I said before. And his king has a very super easy access here. Notice that the king has no chance to do anything. But look at what Smyslov does. What a beautiful move, g4. At first, when I saw this move, I thought that this is a desperate attempt that's going to fail. However, it's a drawing move. What is the point? Obviously, I'm threatening to take on h3. You cannot allow that. If you take, my king is just going to go advance, 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 take it. Well, that's going to keep the white king very busy on the king side. So, h4. Now the black position looks like even more dire than before. Not only is the white king ready for his express run to the white squares all the way to the pawns, taking all of them and then queening, but the black king is now completely tied down to defend against this super fast express h-pawn. But watch what happens. c5, very important. King e2. King h7, again a beautiful waiting move. King d3. King h6. All of a sudden it occurred to white that the win is already not there. And why? Because, well, in the game he just played c3, a5, and takes, and basically the game is drawn. They're just going to play, black cannot win, obviously. He's just going to mark time against the h-pawn, and white can always mark time with e2 and d3. You might wonder, wait a minute, why didn't he continue with his path as expected, king c4? And the reason is that in this position, f5. Now black wins. This is incredible. You look at this position, you think to yourself, how can that be possible? This just looks like another desperate attempt at not losing all the pawns. But, well, now there are two possibilities. One of them is take, after which e4. This is a motif that is really smart to etch in your minds. When the king is like this, look at the c pawn and the e pawn. That's a super position. He's just paralyzed. The pawn wants to queen, and that freezes the white king. He can never take the pawn, he can never go here, and he can never go here. That means if you can out-tempo him, which of course is a very easy task with this king, I can make a million moves with the king, and those two pawns are just too close to do anything. And then eventually you'll have to either go here, or take, and then my pawn is just going to march easily. If you play c3, trying to play a tempo, then I have the beautiful move a5, just maintaining the position. So this position is just lost for white. He is in Zugzwang. His king is going to run out of moves. Is this understood? Anybody questions or anything? Did you want to say something, Arjun?
I was asking about c3.
Oh, yeah, then a5. And I'm just maintaining. You take, I take with the a pawn. We have the exact same position, just without the c and a pawns. So one would wonder, what happens if I just don't? What if I just say, okay, let me just go back. Let me fix my mistake? Well, again, too late. Just f4, game over. Nothing you can do about that. Now you really are in trouble. Takes, king e2, and I can just play king g6. That's it. If you play h5, I take it. If you play e5, I take it. And otherwise, I'm just going to go king here. And again, the pawns are just not far enough. I'm going to just win one of those pawns. Once you start pushing them, it's going to be very easy to win them. Game over. So at the last second, Aronin, not to be confused with Aronin, by the way, that's a veteran Russian player, realized that in this position, after this, his journey to c4 needs to stop right now and just accept a draw. One more move, he would have lost. Amazing to think that in the starting position, there was just absolutely no reason to enter the pawn ending, but it was just an optical illusion. Again, even after the first move, rook here, had he played here, black is just lost. I'm just intending to play rook e7, which is unstoppable. Then my knight is going to just take pawns, and my king is just going to march this way. The bishop is just completely blind. Totally lost. A beautiful chance to be the former world champion, but missed. Our next example, again, belongs to the same category. This time, we're going to see how to do it properly. This is a very, very good technique by Leonid Stein. I know that you guys seen him because I've seen that Ben Feingold had a lecture about him or his endings. Maybe in Legends he had that. So in this position, obviously black is playing for a win, and he has a much better position, and it's his move. But he needs to be careful because the pawns are doubled. He has 2 extra pawns, but they are rook pawns and doubled. That makes life really, really hard. It's like a double whammy, right? And in addition to that, my rook is hitting one of them, but there are also tricks in the position. As you can see, this is very weak, and we can also use our e-pawn at some point to advance. So the question is how to do it. It looks like many ways black is going to be better, of course, regardless. There is just no way for black not to be better. But the question is how to make our task the easiest. And we already see that if the rook gets to h5, this is going to be super annoying. Because the rook is going to be active, is going to be controlling the rank, maybe he's going to attack this pawn, maybe attack this pawn. If there's a king, then he doesn't let him go up. So very, very difficult. So for a first move, h4. Fantastic. If he doesn't play h4, he can play, let's say, takes, and then he can play e5. That's the idea. But white might not take immediately. He might play king d3. All of a sudden, the 2 pieces are forked. You got to play here. Then I'm taking the pawn with check. You have to play here. And this is making life a lot harder, just unnecessarily harder all of a sudden. Because here, even if I take it, and rook takes, and king moves, this is a much harder ending to win. Because I'm about to take this guy and this guy. Maybe you can win this one, but it's becoming a mess. This is not the kind of ending. Here you have to really calculate. And I'll tell you, I don't want to go into this if I'm black. If you etch a picture of this position, you will say, yeah, this is messy. I'm about to lose pawns, and I can probably win one of white's pawns, but not both. And then I'm going to end up with maybe an extra pawn, and who knows what's going to happen. Instead, what he did, as we just said, he goes h4, g takes h4. What else? I'm threatening to take this pawn. If I get this pawn, it's going to be just the end. Also, I'm threatening the same thing on d4. So when he took it, then he took rook to d2. Again, the only attempt, because now, after king d3, king d5, and I'm going to maintain my e-pawn, and that's just, it's all over. So rook d2, e5, and we can already see that this is going to win. After takes, okay, again, black played a beautiful little move. He understands that after pawn takes, rook takes, maybe it's going to become harder. What does he do? Watch the next move. King e6. Brilliant. Just a brilliant move. Now white is in a pickle. Because now the pawn ending is going to lose. Rook takes, pawn takes, and the king is going to march and take the pawn. That's what happened. And alternatively, if you go away, I'm going to go rook takes, and then I'm going to take the pawn. Then I'm going to be up 3 pawns, plus with a very easy access to this guy, and winning easily. So white had to play h5, trying to save his pawn, but it's too late. Now takes, takes, takes. a4, again trying to prevent king f5, but he's going this way, takes. Oopsie. Yeah, this is the computer doing it again. And after, doesn't matter. If you go to c5, you are late by a mile. That's obvious. If you go to here, 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 and you have to let go. Immediately you have to let go. If you go this way, I'm going to go this way, and just take the pawn, win the pawn on me. So beautiful technique by Leonid Stein. And let's go to position number 3. Again, same idea. This position is pretty famous. You might have seen it before, I don't know. But this is like, it's a great example of how somebody, even at the level of the player with the white pieces, Evgeni Sveshnikov, a very well-known Russian grandmaster who is still active today, he's playing against Garry Kasparov in '79, just when Garry was really starting to show who he was, how strong he was. And in this position, white is definitely inferior. Everybody can see that. The black king is active, has more space. Many of the pawns are on the color of the bishop, which is another deficiency from white's point of view. And the question is what to do. In this position, I can't blame him for playing bishop takes c5, because obviously the bishop ending is very tough. I mean, it looks like your bishop is attacked. If you're just going to move the bishop away, let's say bishop e1, then king e4. Who wants to play this kind of a position, right? It's very, very unpleasant. It looks like you're being pushed around. You will never be able to move the king, because if you go right, I'll go left, and if you go left, I'll go right, and penetrate, and it's winning. But if he would have just kept a level head, he would have played bishop e3 in this position, and there is really no win. This is not winning anymore, because after takes, the king just does not cross. You cannot go king e4 because your bishop needs babysitting. And if you move the bishop, let's say if you go bishop here, I'll play bishop here. Again, the king is not really crossing. Or I can play king f3, maybe even, to be really annoying. King f3, and again, the king doesn't cross. So it would have been a draw, but instead he takes on c5, king takes. Still, you think to yourself, my goodness, how on earth are you going to lose this? I can protect all my pawns. And the problem is that you're going to get yourself again into a position where I trade all the pawns with the opposition and I'm winning easily. So after, if a3, king d4, that's a variation worth mentioning, by the way. If here, king here, king here, for a moment it seems like black has gotten nothing because white has the opposition. But I just have to play this move. The opposition has been regained. You can see that now, once again, black owns the opposition, and white is doomed. If you play b4, I'm just going to take, and go here. If you play a4, same thing. I can even play b4. And again, if you go one way, I'm going to go another way. Just take all your pawns, and vice versa. So he tried the other variation after here, king d3. And watch how Kasparov cashes in. Really beautiful. King b4, king c2, king a3, king b1. Again, when we first look at the position, you think draw, right? The king is protecting his stuff, and black has no passed pawns, no breaks. No, watch what he does. a5, white has exactly one move, king here. Still, it looks very confusing. How on earth are you going to do anything? But Kasparov simply plays here, threatening to take the pawns. So you must take, and how to take back, of course, with the king. You must leave yourself with a b pawn. You must be able to trade that pawn. Now, if you go king b2, then b4. So in the game, you went king b1. Again, if king b2 doesn't solve it because of b4, and again, the king is going to have to go back. Let's say king c2, king here, b3, just like in the game. This is the final position in the game, as you will see in a second. After king b1, he went king a3, forcing the poor king to go back. b4, the king went out. b3, and winning. Why is it winning? Well, because whatever you do, I'm just going to go and take your pawns. After takes, king, and all the pawns are gone. So Sveshnikov had to resign. Again, all based on one little decision that seems so trivial, getting rid of this bishop ending that was so bad, but into a lost ending. Okay, next example. Again, a chance to beat the world champion. Mikenas is white against Boris Spassky. That was, of course, well before he was world champion, well before he was even a candidate. So again, in this position, all you have to do, you have an extra pawn, you have good winning chances, because again, the king is a bit stuck, there's a nice pin here, the pawns cannot really move. So these are all good things, but he played knight to d6. And, wait 1 second. Alternatively, king c4, check, king b3. Again, the pawn on g4 cannot be taken because knight d6 is going to win the knight this time. He's got to go back. Now knight d6. Rook has to go to e7. King here. And the king is just going to go here and hunt for this pawn. Not very difficult, right? You can be the world champion. However, in the game he was in a rush. And he played knight to d6. Rook e7. Takes. rook to c8. Of course, taking leads nowhere. So rook d7 check. King here. Activity always leads to the best counterplay. It looks like this pawn was lost, but now we have rook d4 check. So after takes, here, 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 h5, rook here. Simple. And draw was agreed. Nothing, the king is just too far. I'm just going to go h4, h3, h2, and support it with my king. Sure, you can take this pawn, but that's as good as it gets. No win anymore. Again, very tempting to go to the forcing pawn endings, or rook endings in this case, where you think that just liquidating the material is going to get you the point. However, no. It's amazing that a move like knight d6 is a suspicious move because of rook e7. The correct move is to first get the king closer to corral this pawn, because you will never be able to go this way. So after king c4, black is really stuck. He really has no good moves in this position. Now the idea of knight d6 is coming in, so you can't play h5, knight d6, just wins immediately. The rook can't go anywhere. If you go g6, I go knight takes here. So just a real miserable position. If you go king here, then h5, and the king just keeps marching. So they say check, king here. Now threatening rook takes f7. So the rook can try to attack the pawn on the c file. Now white plays this. And now after here, king here. Zugzwang. Wins. Beautiful win. Is this clear? Any questions? Any comments? Okay, cool. Now we're going to deal with some blunders. Let's take a look at this position. This is a fantastic position. I really love it. I'm sure that all of you already know that a bishop and a rook pawn that don't match on the on the queening square is a draw, regardless of the material. In other words, if you pretend that those two pawns are gone, then of course it's a draw. Why is it a draw? Because my king can always go king back and forth, back and forth. There is no way to take me out of the corner without stalemating me, ever. How many of you have known that before this? I'm sure that most of you have, some of you. Okay, if not, then maybe I should build a position. Doesn't matter if it's white to move or black to move. This position is just a draw. Why is it a draw? Because my king is always going to go here. Let's say you advance, I go here, check, I go here, here, here. That's it. You can never get me out of the corner. I'm always going to have moves. If you try to be smart and play check here and try to force me off something, let's say you play this, stalemate. And alternatively, no moves. Pawn advances, stalemate. If you go back, let's say, then I'm always going to have a square. You always have to give me a square. If you don't give me a square, I'll be stalemated. So when we understand that, so yeah, if white can get rid of both pawns, he's happy, because as we saw, it's a draw. Very simple. However, the question is how to do it. It's his move, and he needs to be smart about how he does it. Now you might say, what is the difference? Well, the difference is that, again, there's the element of Zugzwang. Zugzwang is when you force your opponent to make a move, because that's the rules of chess, and any move he makes harms him. Any move that he makes the things worse. Here in this position, white played king g1, blunder. Of course, after king here, this is immediately a draw. Why? First of all, because if bishop takes pawn that looks super attractive normally, we already know that that leads nowhere. And if black tries to force the king out, then I have this little beautiful move. And I'm like, you want to take the pawn? It's stalemate. If not, again, I'm just dancing with my king back and forth. Like this, like this, like this, like this. Dance forever. Just nothing. So, you might wonder, why is this move a blunder? And the reason is king h3. Now, all of a sudden, white gets into Zugzwang. Why? Let's take a look. In this position, if you go king f1, well, let's start with the easy one. King h1, bishop c5. Now, without the pawn, this would be stalemate. Unfortunately, you have pawns. And what are you going to do? You have to push them. And now I take with my pawn, I don't have a rook pawn anymore. Now it's always winning. So after anything you do, of course my bishop is easily stopping the pawns. And now I'm just winning because check and mate. I'm just coming here, it's going to be mate. So there's no chance to rush with the pawn even. So instead, we're going to play king f1, but now king h2. Again, now we managed to chase the white king away from the corner. Imagine losing a position like this, I would have been in tears. So, and again, it's just over. Nothing you can do about it. Because now, let's say after here, I just take, and if you go here, I'm just going to go, eventually, I just get to this position. Now I don't even care if I have the bishop or not. You can do whatever you want. You can have my bishop here. And my pawn just marches in, queening. So even the simplest of positions have so much venom in them. To think that this position white is going to lose, you have to be really clumsy because you shouldn't. But the point here was that white just didn't realize that one of two things can happen. Either he's going to be kicked out of the corner, or he's going to be put in Zugzwang in the corner, where he has to push his pawn, and when it's being captured, then there's no rook pawn. When there's just a regular pawn, of course it's winning easily, because I can always force the king out of the queening square. Any questions or comment? Everybody understands? Okay. Let's see another sad blunder, especially if I'll find it. And this blunder is made by no other than Louis Paulsen. Louis Paulsen was the best player in Europe when Morphy was the best player in the US. They even played a match and Morphy killed him. But nonetheless, he is one of the best players of all time, in Europe at least, back in the 19th century. Here he has a winning position, again based on the idea that we saw before, but he manages to be very clumsy about it and he doesn't win. In the game he plays the move king c4. Now, again, it looks like, Aviv, what are you showing us? The guy has an extra bishop and there's no way to trade the pawns, so the king can't even get to the corner, so of course we're just going to push him away from the pawn and win the game. Well, in theory it sounds beautiful, but in practice it's harder. Of course, what he should have played was king d4, just to be very, very cautious about things. And the moment that black pushes his pawn, let's say here, then we're going to play a6. Not let the king notice that the king is getting absolutely no approval to go to the corner. Cannot let him. I'm not letting him cross. That is the important thing. And now after this, here, and the king doesn't get anything. If you play b4, I take it. And eventually what's going to happen is that I'm going to push the king away, and my king is going to go all the way to b7. Then I move the bishop, then I queen my pawn with no effort. Is that clear? Is that part clear? Yeah. So, what to do instead? After king d4, we can try king c6. And now, simply bishop to b6. Now the beautiful thing is, I'm just not letting you move the b pawn or get to the corner. Soon you will see why moving the b pawn also leads to a draw in many positions. Now you have a problem. If you're going to go away, I'm just going to corral you and I'm going to get this pawn. If you run this way, like for example, let's say king here, 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 king here. You got to let me take your pawn, and my pawn just marches in. I'm going to have a queen and winning. So huge problem. So you might wonder, what is the difference between one move or another? And you could have also played king c5. Oops, sorry. King c5. And here black again has a draw. But he has to be accurate about it. He cannot play any king move because I'm just going to get to b6 and then I'm going to win this pawn. Once I win this pawn, it's over. If you play b5, it's also not enough because I go a6 and I push your king. But if you play b6, then it's a draw. This position is a draw. And again, you have to know those positions. Look what happened in the game. That's actually the best example. The point is b5, and that's draw. Because if you take, then king b7, remember the rook pawn rule. Rook pawn and the bishop that doesn't hit the queening square, you cannot win. It's a stalemate. And of course, the other option is if you play pawn takes, en passant, then again, king to b7. This is a position that is a must to know. I always gonna play king here, king here. If you try to take it away from me, stalemate. So let's say here, here. Let's say you try to do this, stalemate. If you went here, and after king c6, stalemate. Once more. Also, yeah, these positions are very important to remember because there are many positions like this. For example, let me show you another one. That's another one of those positions that does not win. Why doesn't it win? Because again, you cannot prevent me from playing king a8, b7. If you go here, I'll go here. The knight can't move because I'll take the pawn. The pawn can't move because I'll take it. And the king can never support it. Let's say you play some move, wait, I go to the corner. If you try to take stuff away from me, immediately stalemate. So be very, very careful about how to push the pawn. I've seen this happen in games. With somebody's extra knight, especially in blitz games, you have an extra knight in the pawn, you just push the pawn thinking, what's the difference? Let's keep the king busy, but you have to give the king room. If the pawn was on a6, then it's an easy win. A very easy win, because I'm just gonna come with my king to here, and at the right time I'm gonna play check, and if you go out, my pawn will queen. If you go in, my knight will mate you. The difference is that this king is gonna be like here. And then my knight will just mate you. So, yeah. Clear or any questions? I think it's this one. Yeah. Once again, same topic. And let's see if one of you, well, actually solving it is it's gonna take too much time. So I'm just gonna look at it and explain it. Here it's obvious that white is to make a bishop move. Because if I'm gonna go king here, I'm gonna take your pawn. So you have to think to yourself, where should you move the bishop? It looks like you can make many, many bishop moves. All the bishop moves seem like they're possible. Here, 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 here. But only one of them wins. And it's really tricky. If you haven't seen it before. Well, I'm going to play the move, and you will see as the game progresses why it's like that. Bishop d7, the only move to win. Now you might say, what's the difference between this move and every other move? Let's see. King e3, again a must. My king now I have a very simple plan. If you come to the pawn, I'm going to march it. If you go king f3, I'm just going to start marching with my king very quickly. And I'm going to get you into a Zugzwang. So, king e3, h4. Now, if king f4, king d4 is immediately a Zugzwang. Watch, this is what I was talking about. Now you have to go backwards. You have no access points next to my pawn. You have to go back, and my pawn just queens. That's too easy. So, king e4, and now h5. I'm about to go h6, so king e5, h6, forced to go king here, and now bishop e8. The key move of the position. The bishop is far away where it's not being attacked, but good enough to where he's controlling this all-important diagonal. And now, that's it. If you could say pass, you'll be in good shape. However, in chess, there's no pass. You have to make a move, and you're in Zugzwang. Any move you make, I'm going to play h7, and the pawn just marches in. So bishop d7, the only move where the king cannot attack it on the way to where he is and gain a tempo. And on the other hand, where it's close enough, you can still occupy this very short h5, e8 diagonal. You have to prevent the king from going to those squares. Yes?
If the white king were further away, say a3, would that same thing work?
I don't think so. I don't think so because I'll have to look at it because let's try to build it actually and answer it promptly. So we are pretending that the king is here but not here. And of course with white to move. So let's pretend that we go bishop d7, for example. And I have a feeling that this is already not good because king here. Now I just want to run to the corner.
Okay.
So after here, here. And I don't have to worry about this king d4 that would Zugzwang me. So now if you go, let's say, if you push the pawn, I'm just attacking it. And then I'm running to the corner. And if you try to be here, then I'm already...
And no way
Yeah.
I was just figuring if my king were somewhere else on the board, and I had to wait a while to get him over there if there was anything to do, but.
No, you have to. You must use the king as a shelter, one of those walls that prevent the king from running to the corner and or taking your pawn. So, on we go, and I have 3 more things to show you, or maybe 4. Do we have time? Okay, maybe I'll skip one. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the idea of rook versus knight, because rook versus knight, generally speaking, is a draw. For example, let's use this example. And in this position, it's white to move. It looks like he almost maximized his potential. However, he cannot win. So check, king 2, not king c1 because king b3. That's terrible, obviously, but king c1, king here. Now if you make a queen, you get mated. So you have to make a knight, but that's good enough. That's simply good enough. After king here, knight a3, that is already a draw. You cannot create a mating position, and a very important principle, the king and the knight are together. The idea is for the king and this knight you cannot separate them. Once they're separated, it's automatically a win, as you will see from the following example. So this is just a very simple draw. After here, I have to play knight b1, not knight b5. If I go knight b5, that's already over. Excuse me. The king and the knight are separated. Now it's over. I will win the knight for sure. There's just no question about it. The knight can never make it back. Between the domination of the rook over a knight and all kinds of pins and checks, you always lose the knight. That's easy. So, but in this position after knight b1, then it's a draw. The king cannot come closer to create a mating situation. Even though you managed to cut my king as deep as you could on the last rank, there is no victory.
I think if the rook is a queen, there is no reason, right?
If this rook was a queen, then it's an easy win.
Yeah.
But of course, because then you can also play on the diagonals. And already you're threatening mate here, something that you wouldn't be threatening, right? If it's white to move and it's a queen, it's mate on the move. So yeah. Okay, so this was an easy example. And the next one is really, really nice. This is a beautiful combination. Take a look at this one. So king b4. Again, you have no time to take the b pawn because I will just go a2 and then it'll be a draw quickly. So king to b4, a2, king to b3. Almost the same position as before, only black has the extra b pawn. And watch what difference it makes. Knight, king here. And now what to do? b4, the only move. Any knight move is going to lose, right? So b4. Now the game becomes more exciting. King takes, knight c2, king c3. Again, in a position that's very important to remember. It looks like now the knight has to be safe because we're running with it, but it's too late. If you played another move, let's say if you play knight a1, all I have to do is just go like rook g2, and the knight is gone. If you go king here, it's mate. If you move the knight here or here, I'm just going to take it. So this is, again, a position that's worth memorizing. So knight e3, let's say, is the same thing on knight a3, by the way. If knight a3, I should mention that as well. Just king here. Threatening mate and the knight. Immediately over. So knight e3. Now you have two winning moves, actually. You can play king d3 or you can play rook h4. It doesn't really matter. Both of them win, and let me just demonstrate how. After king d3, knight d5, rook h4. The knight is just, there's no way. Once they're separated, it's just over. King here, rook d4. That's it. If knight b6, check. If here, you just go rook here. The knight will always be lost. So, yeah. Even with the extra pawn, it plays a great part in the beginning. However, this position is just lost. So rook h4. Let's check the moves. Knight d1 check. King d2. Knight b2. It looks like it's good, but after here, here, here. Zugzwang. Rook a4 is mate if the knight moves. And of course, if you go here, I'm not going to take the knight. Thank you very much. But I'm just going to make some move with the rook. Let's say rook here. Oh yeah. and over. Threatening rook a8, and it just wins. Alternatively, let's look at other moves. Here, check, and here. Always tricks. Either I fork you, or either I skewer you, or now it's a combination of a mate and knight. Once the knight and the king is separated, it's over. Okay. How much time do I have? Actually, maybe I'll manage to do both. So first we'll see this composition. No, not this one. This one we've seen already. This one. This I was really impressed by, because in this position, white is up a bishop. This is kind of a cute composition. White is up a bishop, but it's obvious that the g2 pawn is just too valuable. All I want to do is just move my bishop, and I'm just going to queen my pawn. What to do against that? So, d6 check. Again, a move that looks really crazy, because you think, why am I giving this pawn away and we check no less? Well, there's a reason behind it, and you will see it in a second. Everything to get to the proper position that we learned before. So if instead we play bishop c5, then after bishop h2, you must push the f pawn. Let's say here, doesn't matter. In both cases, I'm going to take. Now here, because I was threatening to play bishop g3 check and f2, queening my pawns. So bishop here. And now simply bishop f4, winning beautifully, because I want to go bishop here and bishop here. Pinning your bishop, and then the pawn is going to queen. Just beautiful. And watch, it's not over yet. Here, here, threatening bishop h4, bishop check, king d8, king f2, the only move, because any other move, let's say you go d6, I'm going to go bishop h4, pinning your bishop, and the pawn is going to queen, or I queen immediately, actually, in this specific position. So king f2, and now another sacrifice from the other side, and after king takes, pawn queens. The queen is just too strong, obviously, and wins. So you're still wondering why d6? Take a look. d6 check, you got to take it. Otherwise, I'm going to take it. Takes, and now sack. Now I took away the h2 square. You better take me. Now c5 check. You're sacrificing everything on the queen side. You got to take that. What else? To play bishop f1. Now, of course, I'm threatening to take the pawn and immediately make a draw. So takes, takes, attacking the bishop. Bishop h2, f3. Again, a beautiful little move. Just like we saw before. Now, I'm threatening to take the pawn. If you take me, I go king f2, and I just win the pawn. So you must try to go. You must try to go here, but then we already know that after here, or f4, doesn't matter, we have a drawn position. After the king starts advancing, I'm just going to pitch my pawn, take it, and then king to the corner. We know that you can never, ever get me out of here. I'm always going to have king h1, king g2, just like we saw before. Understood? Now, as a finale, I'm going to show you something really cute. I might have shown it before somewhere, but I'm not positive. In any event, this is something you can see again and stay alive, like I like to say. This is very cute endgame. When you see this position, white is up a whole rook, but the b pawn is about to become a queen. And it looks unstoppable. If I manage to make a queen, of course, it's just over. So in a series of forced moves, we're going to have a very cute position. And pay attention to what happened. Rook b4. Now it is black that looks really, really in trouble, because I'm about to just take your b pawn and you cannot queen it. So it looks really, really bad. So what does he do? Rook h4. So now the rook is pinning the rook that's attacking the pawn. Now white is in trouble because black is threatening b1 queen. So white plays c4. Again, disrupting the connection between the two rooks. Once again, he's threatening to take the pawn on b2. And he's going to be up at least 2 pawns in an ending, even if a pawn in an ending, even if he's losing that rook. So rook takes. And now bishop to b5. Now we have a funny play. The rook is pinning this rook, but the bishop is pinning the rook that's pinning the rook. So what does he do? He plays bishop d7. He's pinning that bishop. Why? Because if he makes a queen, then he's going to lose his rook, and then rook takes queen. Not good. So the bishop is on d7. Now the bishop is pinning the bishop, that's pinning the rook, that's pinning the rook. So what do we have to do? Rook d8, pinning the bishop, and we have a multiple pin. The rook pins the bishop, that pins the bishop, that pins the rook, that pins the rook. Now, of course, black is in trouble because he has no more pieces to do anything. So he can try to play queen. Unfortunately for him, after takes, here, takes, he just loses. He's down 2 rooks, so probably he's going to lose his queen. I'm guessing after king b2, rook b4, and wins. Just a beautiful little dessert for finish. Thank you very much for attending my lecture. Thank you.